Hello, and welcome. It is great to be back here with you on Questioning Everything. We are on episode 58. Tonight is Old World Tours, Rockford, Illinois. Apologize if I look a little sweaty here, folks. I have had some air conditioning problems since I've gotten back from my fantastic trip to Rockford, Illinois. Appreciate all of you folks joining in live here to the show. If you want to be a part of the program, drop a chat in the messages wherever you are. Go into Discord, go into our Telegram page, chat during and after the program. And if you have any questions, tonight's going to be a great Q&A question, kind of a live, you know, improv chat night. Just got back home from Rockford today. Uh, been working on fixing the air conditioning, getting everything packed. Everything's starting to settle down here. Kids remarkably passed right out today, so that is fantastic. It's good to hear you from you as well, Kristen. Good to see you, Michael. See everyone in the chat. Nephilim Hunter. Hope you guys have had a great week. Sorry that I have had an absence. Summer is very chaotic. Lots of family things going on up in the air. Tried to keep you guys posted. If you guys want to know if anything is happening on the show, any show announcements, always make sure follow us on our Discord page. Link is in my bio. And yeah, that's going to let you know if there's any scheduling changes, cancellations of the shows. But otherwise, they should be every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. Let's try and do that as much as I can. Tonight, we spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time the last week in my hometown where I grew up for many, many years in Rockford, Illinois. If you're not too familiar with it, it's in northern Illinois, very close to Chicago, about an hour's drive from Chicago, depending on traffic. And we always talk about these big, beautiful cities, these big old world cities, but very few times do these little mid-sized cities like Rockford get brought up into the conversation. And Rockford, a lot of these old Midwest towns, but a larger city like Rockford is a beautiful gem, a hidden gem where the city couldn't tear down all the buildings that were abandoned, all the beautiful infrastructure and architecture that were just set to rot, essentially. So, because of that, you can see so much uncovered up parts of our buried past. Ones without cheap coverings on the fronts of the buildings, covering the beautiful ornate brickwork underneath them, like we've shown you in many modernized buildings, especially in cities like Chicago. They work hard to cover up a lot of that buried layers. They try and make it look symmetric. But Rockford never really had the budget to keep up with the decay. So much hidden gems are still there. One of my favorite ones is the Midway Theater in Rockford. One of the palaces, they called it, of the Midwest when I went to Rockford Public Schools back in the day. We were given the opportunity, the gift to go to a couple plays there as kids, and I'm glad that I did before it completely went under. So even when I was a kid, before I knew what I did now, Midway Theater really stood out to me. It's like it looked like a palace when you walked inside. Chandeliers, beautiful ceilings, just something completely out of place for my city I grew up in. And I even thought that as a young kid going to these plays, it looked like a palace, a very, very old palace, a very old and ran down palace, but a palace nonetheless. So we'll talk about some of the places that I visited, like the Midway Theater, and just touring some of the beautiful remains of Rockford. What other people see as just abandoned buildings, blighted buildings, I can really see just the beauty and the detail and the architecture. So we'll talk a little bit about that trip. Future trips I have planned for the series of old world tours. We've been to Chicago, done videos on Appleton, Menasha. There's so many other places, especially in this Midwest region, that hide tons of beautiful gems of our past. And I'm not talking about those touristy brochure gems like the one of the buildings I went to was the Tinker Swiss Cottage. They say it's the oldest building in Rockford. And it looked really old. The foundation looked really old. The building that they built on top of it, the recreation they built on top of it was just it looked like it was just a complete fakery to what the foundation, the really old looking foundation. We'll look at some of the pictures. I have a Tinker Swiss as well, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But anyways, yeah. Oh boy, folks, I got home and my temperature on my thermostat said it was 85 in here. And since then, I've got it down to 83, but there's some problems with our air conditioning. So I spent a lot of time working on that. I don't think I'll have the camera on too much because of it. My glasses are steaming up and it's kind of hot and sweaty here because it is still 83, but got it fixed. So eventually tomorrow I'll wake up and it'll be nice and cool. So Rockford is a very beautiful example what I've showed you guys, these buildings popping up, very short time frame, very quick population boom, impossible population boom. Rockford went from roughly 13,000 people in 1880 to over 45,000 people in 1900. And all these buildings just popping up pretty much overnight. So tonight we're going to walk through some of the highlights, the churches, including First Lutheran, the fact that Rockford had at least 10 to 15 churches of that same exact scale as the First Lutheran Church that I've posted some videos on. If you guys haven't seen on my Instagram, TikTok, etc., check those out. But the fact that Rockford, at the same time that they built the first Lutheran church, let me pull up the picture that I have of that one. Hey, how's it going, folks? Like I said, sweating from no AC right now. Well, it is running, but just started running about a half hour before the show started. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. This was the first Lutheran church. So this was built right around 1880. Population of that time, about 10,000 people, built in only a year's time, as so many of these other buildings we've visited have that same silly narrative. And at the same exact time, this first Lutheran church, which is very impressive at night, was being built, they had 10 to 15 other churches of the same scale and magnitude being built, just like this one. I mentioned my brother tends to one of these churches in downtown Rockford. I can't remember the name for it. He's a member of it. He gave me a tour of it last year. Didn't get a chance to get much footage. I was hoping to get back to his church this year, but I didn't get a chance. He was a very busy man over the 4th, and he was out of town for most of it. But this is just kind of me walking around outside of the first Lutheran church, one built when they had a population just under 10,000, but they had a calling for 10 to 15 churches of this magnitude at that same period between 1880 and 1910, that same big population boom. But I mean, just think of the scale and the magnitude, and pretty much every one of these churches we'll see are all about a year to 2 years time frame construction. It's just such a magnificent, feat, and it just baffled me today. We can't even build a single family home in under a year's time today. But they were just building these massive churches left and right with such a small population. And we're gonna be doing an upcoming episode the early 1900s, like when everything just seemed to be a flashpoint, where everything kind of seemed to get reset at the same period. Not necessarily the actual reset event, but when our governments, when all of our leaders just all kind of seem to be flipped onto the same script. That'll be an upcoming episode here for the show. But tonight's show, we're going to just primarily talk about some of my highlights of Rockford, the places I went to, and it's just so beautiful. And it's sad so much of it is unfortunately ran down, uh, destroyed basically. The ones that's not destroyed are boarded up, hard to get into, just abandoned. But like I said, just thinking of them and looking at them for the beautiful, like when they were in their prime, it's both sad and you can feel the energy, if you would. Like you can feel the energy of what was and how it's so different in any city. Go to any city, it's just like Rockford. Rockford's just a bigger example with more leftovers. But so many cities, these beautiful, impossible factories that are just abandoned, massive red brick factories up and down Rockford that are abandoned, but had giant steam tunnels, giant geothermal heating tunnels going through these factories, underground tunnels connecting these factories to one another, and the size like the Barbara Coleman building, if anybody's from the Rockford, Illinois area, the Barbara Coleman, factory, so huge, nothing like we build today. Even the factories had character, stood out, had presence. Nothing like today's structures that we get. And it's so sad we build outward still. Rockford is still building outwards. When you go out to, like, the east side of the city, they're still building structures, but they're just building ugly, featureless boxes. That could be a Hardee's one moment, a McDonald's the next moment, it could be a post office the next moment after that, and they just keep recycling the same featureless boxes. They don't bother taking care of the beautiful structures that all of our cities had. They either tear them down for a parking lot or let them just slowly fall to decay. Like I said, Rockford had 15 churches. It had some of the most churches per capita at the time. This was one of the churches I went to, the first Lutheran church. Look at those beautiful double spires, folks. Just absolutely beautiful. And this is one that's still standing, but many, many of these beautiful churches in Rockford have fallen into disrepair and had to be demolished, or they just sit to rot away empty. But at a time when they only had 10,000 people, they had 15 churches like this. And I loved the front door. It looked very kind of, it was large, but it looked disproportionate. Like it looked like it should go a lot further down. Same with the towers right there. Now, this is an example of one of the buildings I talk about when people ask what's the difference between like an old world structure and just like an old, beautiful building. The Illinois National Guard Armory, this building here, is an example of just a really beautiful old world building. It's in like three layers. We talked about this in couple episodes back. When you start at the core of any city, it could be Rockford, it could be your hometown, it could be Chicago. You have these beautiful, impossible, ornate structures built in rapid time with small populations. When there was only horse and buggy and muddy streets, no hammer and chisel, no, or sorry, just hammer and chisel, no power tools. Every city was building these beautiful, beautiful structures. Like, we'll say that last the first Lutheran church that we were just looking at. Go back here. So this is the first layer of the onion that you see, if you will, in most cities. beautiful ornate structures like this, all built just outside of a time where anyone alive could remember, right? All in the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s. And then you get structures pre-war, post-war, the outer layer of that. You go away from the city core, the inner city part, and you get still good structures, like still solid looking, nice, large proportions, some details along the sides of the buildings. But this isn't an old world structure. This is a beautiful structure we don't build like. This was built by a civilization, by a people that at one time, a country that at one time cared about everything from what a National Guard armory looked like in a city like Rockford to their theaters. Now we just build featureless boxes. This National Guard Armory was very beautiful looking in its prime. I remember when it was still kind of up and going. They abandoned this facility in the 1990s in Rockford. I'll show you some of the front. That's where it's really beautiful. But they abandoned this building in the 1990s, and this is what they moved into in the 1990s to replace this one. Let me just pull up the picture of the current now building. Sorry, thought I had it in the reel. And while I find that, so this was a building built with very, very solid foundation. And I actually had a chance to go and I filmed a video on the outside of this armory, posted it to all my shorts if you guys have seen it yet. But right after I got done with that, some construction workers actually came, opened up that entrance there. And I actually got to get some really awesome inside shots of it. So you can see just the core down to the original flooring of this building, built like nothing today. And this is pre-war, post-war, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. This isn't necessarily a mud flooded structure, but this is again a structure we don't build like today. See a few more pictures of the outside here because I mean, just look, great features, not as much ornate detail on the outside of these buildings like the 1800s, early 1900s buildings. The one all no one's alive to remember exactly how it was built or who built it, but still quite a lot of detail, quite a lot of care went in to these structures still. And then you have today where it's just ugly boxes. This is some of the inside shots of this National Guard building that I got the construction workers let me in. You can see some of the, like the details right here. Let's see if I can zoom in on it here, folks. Sorry. It's not letting me. There we go. Some very nice details to the bones of the structures. It looks just like ruins to me, but it seems like they're renovating it, is what I was told. So that's very great to hear. But to many, they see just ruins, but I see just bones and like a structure that we don't build like these today. And the detail and the care that they put into it. I don't know if you guys can see the flooring in some of these shots I got. I was only allowed just a few seconds in and out, but I want to try and get as much as I could. But just look at that original wood flooring. It's dusty, needs a lot of TLC, but nothing like we build today. Nothing like we build today. I'm just reading through your guys' comments here, trying to keep up with the chats as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a lot of just look. That's a good shot, close up on the flooring. It doesn't look like it could be saved, really. It's so warped and stuff. But man, I was so glad I got to get some access of it. Here's a nice riverfront view of Rockford. There's so many buildings from that skyline that have been demolished just because They couldn't maintain them. We went from a population of over 200,000 in Rockford. Now it's about 150,000, I believe. And far even from when I was a kid 20 years ago, growing up, well, 30 years ago, growing up there, to what it is now. Like, so much of the ruins are still there. That's why I say Rockford's such a beautiful hidden gem still, but it's falling to more and more ruin and disrepair on the daily. That's why I encourage you guys. I go out to these cities to try and capture as much as I can. This is another beautiful theater that Rockford has. So the Midway Theater was the one that I filmed, and that is completely in disarray and abandoned. This is the Coronado Theater. Went to that one as a kid as well. Still very, very beautiful theater. One of the most beautiful theaters in the area, both this one and the Midway in its prime. But this one is still up, and if you guys have like a good place to see plays, good tar shows. I've seen Jackson Brown at the Coronado Theater, seen Jerry Seinfeld at the Coronado Theater. It's like just a beautiful like venue hall. Highly recommend checking it out if you're in the Illinois area. But let me show you what the Midway Theater is. This was the one that I captured, and it's in the bottom of my thumbnail here. The Midway Theater, that is unfortunately abandoned. They pretty much shut down like in the early 2000s. When I was a kid, I got to see a few plays, was blessed to see a few plays at the Midway. And now it's just a shell of its former self, but in its prime, it was the best theater, they say, in North America. Had over 2,000 seats. Again, it was built in like just about under 2 years' time. Hang on, folks, just pulling this up. Should see it switch over and not my hot AC self. Oh, it's already 80 degrees in here. That's 5 degrees colder than when we started the show, folks. Love it. Love it. Okay. So this was my photo of the Midway Theater. It's off of State Street in Rockford. And right off the bat, that ornate detail, again, just something we don't build like today. Like they didn't build in that armory that I just showed you. This is something that's completely lost on us, and we're just supposed to believe that people with horse and buggy, hammer and chisel, muddy, poop-filled streets build something like this in a year's time, and we can't even build a single family home today. And it'd be one thing if these were in major cities, small or even, moderate cities like Rockford. Okay, sure, but these were happening across the world. These type of beautiful architectural feats, impossible beautiful architectural feats, were happening across the world, across the country, in a time when they were all a frontier area. Even the Tinker Switch Swiss cottage or cabin in Rockford, the one of the oldest houses, the founder's houses of Rockford, which is just like kind of a rebuilt house on top of a very old looking foundation. I'll show you those in a moment. They show you just a level of architecture, a level of detail that we don't pull off today, not even close. That from you said we did what is now a private school. That was a building like that not long ago, old wood floors in it. We had to replace some of it, didn't look anywhere close to the old world. Yeah, and I mean, it's still impressive. Don't get me wrong, it's still impressive structures, especially by what we build today. Like most people's houses aren't even going to survive until their mortgage is done paying for them. And these structures we just forget about, let sit in ruin. A theater with a massive bell tower, no bell in it now. I believe that looks like a very great spot for a mooring station, if you'd ask me. a nice swanky theater. You can dock right in with one of those airships, come right down into the theater hall. Be perfect. Just look at that. Those spiral details and those columns right there. I wonder what kind of statue sat here. It looks like something once sat here prominently. Probably some Greek or Roman god like we've seen in many other places, like in Chicago. Michael, I know you wanted some zooming in work on some of these columns. This is like the best I could get for you, bud, but this again looks very maybe Egyptian to me. Like we've seen a lot of Mesopotamian stuff in the northern Illinois area, like Chicago, like the Medina Athletic Club. Yeah, the designs on the top look almost like the Oscar statue. Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, look into the history of the Oscar statue as well. This one is definitely old world. Absolutely, Mac. It's not the Armory quality. Those are your grandparents and your great grandparents. Those are people that were alive, but they still had a quality that is unmatched and nothing like we build today. But this, in a far primitive time, in a frontier period of Illinois, and a population, this was built in, I think, 1904, in about a year's time. Only a year's time for this. No one was alive to remember exactly if this story happened, and maybe vague details of their daddy building it, but even then, they're 90s, 80s, and have very vague recollection of the actual events. And this stuff doesn't look like it's just merely 100 years old. This looks like it's hundreds and hundreds of years old. A very prime example of an old world structure. This was a pre reset structure. This was a founded and repurposed structure. And now it just sits in ruin. Absolute shame what it was. And inside of it, like, as impressive as the ornate detail outside, like the interior of it, I wish I had a camera phone when I was a kid to capture some of the beautiful details of the theater. They always stood out to me as a kid. Like I said, I walked into it and it looked like a very old palace, and a very old and ran down palace, but a palace nonetheless. Even when I was a kid, it just stood out from everywhere else in Rockford. And there's many examples of this building here. Get a couple shots of the interior. I tried to walk down this narrow alleyway here, and the deeper I went, the higher the like sunkenness of the structure went, and looks like very clear evidence coming up of some more buried layers of this. This is on the backside of the Midway Theater. But I walked up shortly after this part of the film into probably some homeless dude's living room. I seen like big stacks of clothes, big giant grocery cart full of belongings. So I was like, oh, I think I'm walking into someone's living room. So I quickly got out of that area, but the backside of it, if I could have gotten more of it, was very, very interesting. As you see, it went kind of deeper and deeper the further back on the mid side of the Midway Theater here that it went. Um, so just give you some of the details about it. The official narrative, just pulling it up, August 3rd, 1918 is when it was built. Cost about $200,000 to build this back then. That's roughly $3.8 million today. Had over 2,000 seats, all on one floor. Italian marble walls, gold detailing, a huge pipe organ, perfect sight lines from every seat, and a 90-foot clock tower that was visible from far away. That's the clock tower on the right side of the front of the building here. right there. People at the time called it one of the most beautiful theaters in the entire Midwest. It was built like a palace because that's exactly how they built things back then. And now it's been abandoned since around 2006. The roof collapsed in 2012. It's just sitting there on East State Street, slowly falling apart. Boarded up windows, graffiti, you can see the decay. Accidentally walked into a gentleman's living room. I apologize if he's listening. This is what I mean when I say we can't maintain what they left us, folks. The Midway was built with a level of ambition and craftsmanship that we don't even attempt anymore. They didn't build it to be functional. They built it to be impressive, to last hundreds, if not thousands of years. And we let it fall apart in less than 100. In 2006, it closed. It was built officially, according to the narrative, in 1918. Not even 100 years, and we couldn't keep up with it. The roof fell in 2012 on this building. Many city projects are trying to save the Midway, and I hope they pull it off. I really do. I've seen some cities successfully pull off saving buildings like this. Many are realizing just how different these structures were built back then. In an impossible time frame with a population of just a little over 10,000 people, they were building buildings like the Midway, buildings like those first Lutheran church we showed you, and 10 other churches just as impressive as that one. Again, the Midway was built with a level of ambition and craftsmanship that we don't even attempt anymore, and we just let it rot today. That says something about where we are as a civilization, in my opinion, compared to where we just were over 100 years ago. They had the skills, the vision, and they built something like the Midway. We apparently don't even have the will to keep it from falling down today. Where has our society's ambition gone when we can't even keep something like this from falling in on itself in less than 100 years after it was said to be built? Rockford did save the Coronado. Yes, absolutely, absolutely they did. And again, anyone who has the chance to see the Coronado, it's a great place to catch a show like a comedian, singer, not sponsored by the Coronado or anything. It's just another beautiful theater. Not as beautiful as the Midway, in my opinion, in its prime, but still two beautiful theaters in a city like Rockford. They saved one of them. They're trying to save the other one. Who knows? It has really fallen in on itself, though. Every time I drive past the Midway, though, it hits me. This was once the crown jewel of Rockford's entertainment scene, the entire Midwest region's entertainment scene. Now it's just another abandoned building that most people drive right by, drive right past to work every day, not even knowing what used to be. And they just see it as nothing more than just blight. And it's far from the only one. Seth, you said I need to be careful and at least carry. Maybe sometimes I'm overconfident in cities like Rockford. Growing up there, I know most of the areas. That I was a little dumb with going a little bit too far down in the nighttime. Even in the daytime, though, Rockford has kind of gotten a little worse than it did even me living there 5, 10 years ago. Sadly, it just keeps falling more and more into blight. It's like none of our politicians, we're not voting our way out of this. The main, one of the main things I hope to get across to everyone listening is it's not just happening with our history. It's not just necessarily our elected officials' fault. We're not voting our way out of fixing this. The system was designed to let this fall apart. Across the world, it's the same thing. Every city, you're going to find the same thing. Buildings like the Midway in complete disrepair. And we're just building boxes miles out from the Midway. One day, they'll just tear this down and make it a parking lot. And no one will even notice, and no one will even know something as beautiful as this gem existed. That's a big purpose of the whole old world tours series. I want to try and document as much of these beautiful places that are left. Like I told you, these beautiful examples, there's only 5 to 10% of these still standing from what used to be in just America alone. Think about that. 90% of the buildings like this, 90% of other midways in far more beautiful places are already destroyed, paved over parking lots, featureless boxes built in place of them. Only 5% of places like this remain standing. Document it, people, while you can. That's the message I'm trying to get across here. It does very much look like a mooring station, Michael, right here. And I hope to travel to all these cities, big and small. You guys have given me so many different places to go, places to check out. A lot of Rockfordians have given me many places to check out when I was there. I tried to get to as many places as I could. I didn't realize how many places were still left to document. I didn't get to a fraction of what I could, both in terms of time limit, safety concerns, etc. You almost need to hire like a guard in some places on the other side of uh, on West State Street areas. Yeah, Mike, you said we don't even make dams like Hoover anymore. That was epic. Steel and glass became cheap, and rivets made construction faster and also more cheap. Then came welding. Hard to bring back stonemasons now. Yeah, that's exactly true, Mike. That's exactly true. All those dams, again, another period. That's what we're going to be talking about, that early 1900s period coming up in a couple episodes. That's when it all seemed to kick off. At the same time, they were building dams like the Hoover and hundreds of other dams. They built these beautiful mason structures, and all the masons that could build something like this far gone, far removed. And we can't build dams like they used to, even. All cheap materials, nothing like that. Have I seen any of what I call gilded restoration going on? What do you mean by gilded? You mean like where they try to fix some of these old world structures, Seth? That's kind of what I think you might be getting at. Yeah, they were kind of doing that to that, old National Guard armory that I showed you earlier. That that's I'll encourage any type of work to keep the building standing, but, um, sometimes, they ruin a lot when they do try and restore it, maybe gilded by, like, half-assing the restoration. I actually seen an example of that in a really small town of Sheridan and Sharon, Illinois, actually, or Sharon, Wisconsin, I believe it was, right next to Popular Grove. Real tiny little town, but I seen a very prime example of the mud flood buried there. They just bought this building, and it's like the current owner dug out and figured out he had a whole nother floor to work with. Let me see if I can find that shot real quick. And sorry, this isn't exactly a formatted show like my Tuesdays and Thursday shows usually are. It's kind of just taking your guys' questions, chatting with you, showing you my tours of my old hometown, Rockford, Illinois, my last couple days there. And just getting home, yeah, I didn't have time to put as much work to like an actual structure of the show. Might not be quite an hour and a half, might be over an hour and a half to taking more of your guys' questions like this, but I just kind of wanted to show you where I've been the last couple weeks and what my plans are for the next coming episodes. Hopefully, now that I'm back home, the air conditioning's fixed. It's down to 78 now, folks, by the way. That's almost 10 degrees cooler than when we started. So it looks like my fix did hold. Oh, that's almost the best news of the week. My wife called and said, "Oh, I think the air conditioning is having issues." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I'll try and fix it when I get home." It's never great when air conditioning goes out when it's in the 90s here. Never great. But I got it fixed. Easy fix. All right. Let me pull up. Sorry. Just looking through the roll. I just literally downloaded all these photos. This is in Sharon, Wisconsin, I believe it was. Went there with ice cream for the with the little gal, and couldn't help but walk around the old world structures while waiting for them to finish up their cones. And as you often see in these little tiny towns, this one I don't even think is a 1,000-person town. You'll see the partial buried layers, but this was a newly purchased building, like somebody's in the process of renovating it. But you can clearly tell the original first floor is right down here. Let me get another picture of that. Like this tiny little stairwell, this tiny little arch is the supposed current first floor's entranceway. But there's a whole nother layer right down there. See if I got a couple more pictures of that. Yeah, there's a front door for that another layer. They're like in the process of renovating there on the building. I don't know if I got any far shots of the building. Yeah, there you go. And this is just a tiny little town, and I think it's Sharon, Wisconsin, but not even 1,000 people now. Probably like 500 people when this was supposedly built, and they have no power tools, no heavy equipment, and they build a whole dugout supposed layer there. And this is what they use for the entranceway for the first floor entrance. Make it make sense, folks. You can find that everywhere. Small towns are very much hidden gems like this. I got 8 more photos of that building. I love that building though. Great ice cream there as well. Buried windows, little tiny town. And this is some of the unfortunate fates of a lot of those factories I told you about in Rockford. Just ran down, abandoned, left to rot. This was one of those, 1950s pre-war, post-war factories, not mud flood, not old world necessarily, though it could be very much built on top of an old world foundation, something below it, absolutely, but this is just an example of something we don't build to this scale. Even the large detailed windows, the brick arching in all of the windows here, we don't build quite like that today, do we? No character, nothing like this. This was just a few decades ago. Our things last just a few decades now. Our houses last maybe 20 years. This will be standing long after the houses that we have mortgaged today get paid on full on our mortgage notes, right? Go to Chattanooga, Tennessee. The whole city is like this. Yes, Farty. I really want to go to Chattanooga. I've had tons of people message me, uh, city workers that have messaged me from Chattanooga over the years. I've done a few videos on Chattanooga, like short videos, not like episodes on Chattanooga. Maybe I should do one on that. I would absolutely love to travel to Chattanooga someday because, yeah, so much Chattanooga is very buried, very obviously buried too. The windows are old school, but not old world. Absolutely right. Michael. Very impressive, very beautiful, old school, nothing like we build today in level of quality even, but not old world level of quality. So when people ask what's the difference between old world buildings, like they say, oh, is all of America old world? Not necessarily. Stuff our grandparents built, our great grandparents built, no. They might have built on top of what was an old world building. But even what a few generations our grandparents, our great grandparents have built, we don't build like today. And it's mostly a lot because of our family dynamics. Like there's no family trades, there's no family crest, family lineages, and family like heritages. Like your family name used to mean everything to a person back then. And now it means nothing to someone. It's just the last name. It's just something you fill out on a DMV form, right? The 3 windows all over the side. Yep, absolutely, Mac, absolutely. Yeah, Michael, Iowa. Yeah, that's my birthplace, Davenport, Iowa. Davenport, Iowa has tons and tons of mud flood buried examples. I would love to get up to the Davenport, Iowa area sometime soon in Iowa City. We showed a little bit of that 5 dome capital they have in Iowa. That's Iowa's what, second capital, but the first 5 dome capital, the only 5 dome capital in the country today, built when Iowa was a frontier state of a little over 100,000, 200,000, no income tax, anything like that. And they were building marvelous 5 dome palaces as their state capitals because they outgrew their first capital. Seth, you say I separate by saying historical or old world. That's a good way to say it as well. That is absolutely a good way to say it, Seth. What else do I have from Rockford I can show you guys? I'll show you more after I kind of go through the footage and stuff. This is just raw footage. Planning to put more clips together and whatnot. But I just got home a little bit later than I wanted to, so I haven't done a show all of last week, and that's I apologize for that. I know things are out of my control, and you guys are more than awesomely accepting about that, but still, I love being here chatting with you guys, putting on these episodes each and every week. So when I'm not here chatting with you guys, I do feel very bad about it because I miss it. I miss it. Here's the old East Market building in Rockford, another very awesome example of buried and unburied layers. This is right off of East State Street in Rockford. Wait to pull that up for you guys. Oh, I hate when air conditioning doesn't work. Well, it is starting to work now, but it's still so dang hot. Okay. This is an old world building. Built again in a time period. One of the main characters I say for an old world is building when it was built during horse and buggy, hammer and chisel, and no one was alive to actually verify its construction. Just a few very shady looking doctored photos, people standing around, often in times in suits, construction timelines under a year, and they were building in this quality. This is right on the corner of East State Street here, like right on the Rock River, one of the first buildings, the Market Avenue one. It was built again in just about a year's time. And look at these giant window frames. And this is another one of those very narrow, buried out entranceways right here, just like we've seen in that little town building. And here's the main entrance to this building. Sorry, kind of doing this on the fly, guys. Part of the problem with lives, but I love doing the live format nonetheless. Just look at the archways and the little tiny doors today. All that detailing, and again, it's just sitting in disarray, sitting for rent. waiting for somebody to save it. Nothing like we build today. And even if we could, again, it takes us about a year to build a single family home today. I found these symbols, if anybody knows anything about symbology or anything like that. I found these kind of interesting, kind of put randomly on some of the bricks along the side, but on both sides of this building, it has these very like funny, narrow doorways, like buried completely beneath the ground. Like this is clearly where the first floor was. If I can get some good shots of this for you. Look at that. And look how narrow the stairways are going down. You can still see these in a lot of major cities. This would make no sense for a building to be built like that at the time. And to dig out a basement is already hard enough in modern times without any power tools, heavy equipment, heavy excavators. They're digging out entire floors like this, and we usually find out way afterwards. That's the funny part. It's not like we already knew about this. You can't get the original blueprints for buildings like this ever. It's we were doing some street work or sidewalk work, and oh wow, we found a whole nother level of this building or a whole tunnel connecting this building to another building a mile down the street. We found a whole vast tunnel system. Always the case. We discover it after the fact, and there's actually no official records of it. You listen to these historians trying to explain what they see, and they say, oh, it's just random street raising levels, or oh, it was lost in fires, or they have no actual explanations. It's prohibition tunnels built by architects during the prohibition, I guess. Vast gangster architects were building vast red brick tunnels under all these cities. That explains the buried layers in a lot of these cities, they say. This was the Rockford News Tower, another building that's completely empty today. Used to be home to the Rockford Register Star. This isn't the original tower on top. The original tower looked very much like another example of a beautiful mooring tower, like a mooring tower, perhaps ether antenna as well. I don't know if I have any of the old pictures of that, but again, so many of these buildings you see, this one, right? This is the East Market building again on the East State Street side. Look at those windows. It makes no sense to build these massive windows right on sidewalk level. I'm sure they have to replace the glass all the time. And could you imagine when it was just horse and buggies walking around on muddy streets, kicking up rocks, kicking up goodness knows only what else? They would have to replace these windows daily, but they would build architecture with windows right on street level like this, and then buried floors underneath it. It does not make sense. Clear examples in places like this of architecture we can't replicate today, even if we wanted to. Definitely not in the time frame they built it, and with proportions buried underground that makes no sense for the time and the period. East Market Street building, very beautiful one. I wonder if I got a shot of just showing you how many like disproportions to this building, the east side market. Did I get the doorway? Going back to the side. No. So there's just like a hidden, like a door that just leads to nowhere. Oh, I did. Right here. So this is on like the second floor of this building now, after you go into the first floor of that East Market building. And this is just a doorway that leads to nowhere, right off to the sidewalk. Doesn't show anything in the original building pictures we get of this impressive structure. Beautiful door, by the way. Don't see doors like that anymore, do you? Tiny little flimsy plywood doors is what we get. I wonder if that's a gunshot in Rockford. It's possible. Very possible. I could not get over this archway though. Just look how massive it is. Little tiny doors and massive archway. Even if you could build that, why would you build this for such a tiny town and just for no reason? You're supposed to be a frontier town. You build things as simple and basic as you can. It's opposite though, isn't it? They built them as most extravagant palace-like buildings as they could, and we build as simple as we can today. That's the most baffling thing about it all. It's like a complete lost level of human knowledge, of human capabilities. Yes, they were built by our hand, but when and how long ago? And why can't we seem to replicate to this scale and to this level in every city, in every country, in every town? You find the same scale all around the 1800s. Nothing like what we're building today. I love that door. Make it make sense. All right, folks, what else do I have for you? Let me read through some of the comments. Still think it's crazy when Trump was talking to the Fed chair about the construction. Trump said, "Why don't you just use the structure the Fed was built on top of? It goes down 3 stories." Random slip up, or maybe perhaps one of those soft disclosures they drop in. They kind of hint to the actual truth, how it goes 3 stories down. That's They like to tell you the little slip ups. That's those Freudian slip ups. Those aren't accidental, I don't think, as much, Seth. The Southern Lost Cause made President Lincoln and Grants look like freaks and General Lee a god of the Lions game. Yeah, Civil War is a big, contentious part of history if you look into it, actually. Not even about the South and the North, the Confederacy and all of that stuff, not even about the war, but just look at the pictures, look at the doctored pictures, the doctored scenes of destruction. They look exactly like world great fires happened. Doesn't the White House go down 10 stories? Well, I mean, yeah, like you have the presidential bunker, Michael, I think like that safety bunker. They have like several stories underground. Who knows how deep the White House actually goes, how much they added to it. A lot of what military installations, if you ever heard of DUMBs, deep underground military bases, they love to dig underground and tunnel deep underground. It's because I believe a lot of these structures are still far underneath our feet. There's been many, many resets, many layers on top of many layers. Who knows how impossibly old these structures are? Oh, Seth, you said, "Oh, I know the reason because that was their whole world, especially in small towns, and people wanted to bring some of Europe to them." Yeah. Sorry, guys, just reading through your comments as well. Said, the Parliament building here, Michael, in Ottawa has many levels underneath. Yeah, Canada has so many great examples of beautiful and possible architecture, beautiful giant castles in remote regions, built, of course, year, 2 years time frame, possible time frames, possible scale in the most remote regions, even today. Okay, this is me just kind of poking around that East Market building. You can see a little bit of that. Look at that. Tiny dug out lower floor right next to this magnificent archway. They would just do that. Okay. And that's completely abandoned, by the way, if you guys want to know. If you're interested in buying a old world building and revitalizing it, I highly recommend maybe checking that one out, eh? Okay. I got some stuff on Tinker Switch Cottage as well, but I kind of got to part through that together better. My AC is still acting up. Um, so I think, yeah, like I said, it was going to be a little short show. Just want to show you a little bit on my tours of Rockford. This is my goal, getting more organized with these tours, maybe even linking up with some of you guys as well. Many of you have reached out to me, recommended great cities in America and beyond. I mean, it's my dream to travel to these cities, document these buildings before they're gone. Beautiful buildings like the Midway that won't be around for my grandkids to see. My kids could see it in ruin, but my grandkids will see it as maybe a empty field when I take them to grandpa's hometown. So I said, if you see buildings like this, document them. See what you can before it's not around anymore. Because it's something we just don't build like today. We just can't build like today. It's built by our hands, sure, but when and how long ago? All right. Show you a few more shots. Yes, this is what I'm talking about, the Midway, like 100% to the right, a mooring station. And on the left side, it almost looks like there used to be a twin mooring station right here. Looks like there should have been another twin tower on the left side of this, like two little towers side by side. And this one was just taking out sometime when they founded the buildings, the inheritors, and just revitalized what they could. Just beautiful, beautiful detail. And again, this just abandoned like hundreds of other buildings in Rockford. I could not believe how much of these buildings were abandoned like this. Sean, Midway, really great theater. Yeah, I got to see it inside. Some beautiful interior views, even when I was a kid. Like I said, it's an old palace, a really, really old looking palace. Very out of place. Nothing like we build today. Some more of those carvings. Show me any mason that builds like this in new buildings to this level, to this scale, across all these little towns today. It just doesn't happen. Our art, our culture, our music, everything is just fully degrading into characterless boxes, folks. Document what was out there, see what was out there while you still can before it all becomes characterless boxes. Grandfather was a farmer in central Illinois. He used to plow around burial mounds in the middle of the fields. They are all gone now. Nobody even remembers them. So true. Illinois had so many of these giant burial mounds, they tell us, and a lot of them were destroyed. And Ohio destroyed a lot of these mounds too, and just to hurry up and put a street through it. And we had no idea what was actually in these mounds. It's a great treat that you did. There's no theater like it. It's nowhere in Chicago, even in my opinion, like just quite that level of beauty in the inside of the Midway in its prime. And any society that would build this, that would let it go to complete ruin in less than 100 years, like that doesn't make any sense to me. Trump has said several things about architecture that would say technology my uncle would tell me about and said we should have never taken down the World's Fair. So yeah, I read tons of articles of like the public demanding them not to tear it down or at least not to such haste. They're like, even if these are temporary buildings, we should work to save them. They're magnificent. Talking about the World Fair buildings, there was a lot of protest in Buffalo and Chicago, and they pretty much demolished them oftentimes in the dark of night. Chicago's World's Fair, a lot of it caught fire mysteriously, and they just rushed to demolish it and rushed to take it off to the landfills Chicago used a lot of the ruins of the World's Fair and ruins from the Great Fire to fill in the side of the Lake Michigan, like the coastline of Lake Michigan now, they say. You know, bury it underwater, bury it underground. Great way to hide the evidence of what actually was. Set it on fire when all else fails. All right, I'll take a couple more of your questions here and then kind of wrap up the episode for tonight. Next couple episodes, like I said, we're going to be talking about this 1900s period, this fabrication period, when it all seemed to click off a little bit in more depth, a little bit more detail. Also, next week on Tuesday, we're going to have good friend Guy Anderson on the show. He was on a couple episodes back, a couple months back, I should say. Sorry. We had a great conversation about Tesla, about the incubator babies, the population boom right around this time period we're talking about across the world. He's a great guy. We'll be talking with him on Tuesday show. So look forward to talking with him. I believe next Tuesday or Thursday show. I think it is Thursday. Sorry. And not this coming, but next week, Thursday. Sorry. And let's see, other than that, take a couple more of your questions. Yeah, I hope Chicago Fire is definitely very, very, very sketchy. We should do a whole episode coming up on that, just in detail, just the Chicago Fire. We've talked a lot about the Chicago Fire, but we've also lumped in all the other great fires happening at the same time that night, the 9 plus cities erupting in flames simultaneously that night. Not just Chicago, but Chicago's Great Fire, looking with extra detail at the pictures and stuff they have and the narrative they tell us, it really doesn't add up. And it is really kind of fascinating to look at it closely. Maybe we'll do a Chicago Fire episode if you guys like it. Let's see here. Burn it down. That's the model, apparently. That's what they're doing in small doses today. You always see these beautiful churches across the country, across the world, really, stood for thousands of years and then magically just erupt like they were just doused in kerosene. And they just go up in flames one day. They do that in small scale. They don't necessarily do a whole great fire level city cleanup like they did in years past. We showed in those previous episodes how those very much all seemed linked. 9 fires in one day at the same time, separate causes, all just along the lake front of Lake Michigan, but other cities were spared in its path. Just all happened at the same time. Yeah, okay. 1871, very significant year, James. Yes, absolutely, James. Absolutely. Yeah, Sean, the death toll very low is impossible indeed. Am I familiar with the oh, sorry, comment. Am I familiar with the Pennsylvania Turnpike and Old World architecture, Seth? Not so much the Turnpike about Old World architecture. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Drop me an email about it. I know of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's a very fun stretch of highway I've driven on before, but I don't know too much about the Old World history behind it. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up here, folks. Try and fix my air conditioning. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Wasn't quite as structured as my usual shows are, but just got back into the house a few hours ago, got unpacked, and wanted to just come on, say hi, see how you guys were doing. Miss chatting with you guys. We'll chat more on Tuesday, or sorry, Thursday about Rockford and more about that early 1900 period, mid to late 1800s period, and when that switch all just seemed to flip. And what exactly I mean when I see say it all seems to just flip at that same period. Thank you guys all very much for tuning in live. For those who tuned in live, if you haven't yet, follow me on Spotify. Follow all my other pages to check out my link tree in the bio from wherever you're listening to. If you have any suggestions, anything you'd like to chat about, drop an email or join our Discord page, also in the link tree bio. And we will see you Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll have a full laid out episode then, hour and a half long. This one's a little bit short, but still unpacking. Until next time, friends, question everything and have a great rest of your week. I'm sorry, a great rest of your night. See you Thursday.